What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian and Ozzy podcast. This week, we're going to be analyzing and predicting the UFC 266 pay-per-view going down this Saturday. What's up, Ozzy? How we doing this week?
Doing awesome. Was just in Atlantic City last day or two, putting down some bets, collecting on some old winners, and excited to get back to this pay-per-view worthy card with 3 5-round fights on it.
Yeah, decent undercard too. A few prelims that are actually really fun. Specifically, the last three prelims, all really good fights. They could be on the main card. We did lose two fights in the past 4 or 5 hours. Looks like they're going to be postponed. The Bueno Silva and Fierroth fight is postponed, and Robertson is out of his fight with Maximov. But Cody Brundage is filling in for Maximov, so we still got 13 fights. And lastly, before we get into these first few fights, just a quick recap of the last card. I lost 0.17 units. Had three bets, one won, one lost, and one drew. Alatang, I think, was a good bet, even though it didn't win. So I'm fine with how the week went. You, on the other hand, had a profitable week. Tell us about how your week went on Bet MMA last event.
Yeah, pretty clean event overall. I think I won most of my money line plays. The only bad one I'd say was Mike Rodriguez, but I mentioned that Tefan decision at plus 460, so I had that and basically covered everything there on Mike. Lipsky, easy winner. I told you, Baum was a terrible fighter. This clinch nonsense, like she just was all around really, really bad, nowhere near UFC level. And Lipsky dominated there. Raquel Pennington was my biggest bet of the night. She picked up the pace, significantly in those last 2 rounds. And I was able to get her plus money as well, plus like 250 after round 1 to win by decision, which was great. I ended up on Carlson Harris, and Hannah Goldie as well, who caught an armbar, didn't hit her win condition, but won anyway. So funny how that works sometimes. And then a few prop losers. Blanchfield submission. I think she should have went for that armbar position at some point. Just as dominating and didn't have to bust up her hands. And then Harris submission, which I thought still really, really good bet at 3-1 and up. So, and then I lost a little stab on JP Buys, but I said he would have a better first round. You would think that he'd come in much more focused, and I think that was definitely the case. And he lost a tough fight there. So really good night overall. And then 6 units in total between Bellator and UFC. UFC was 3.5, and then Bellator was just undefeated. Three pretty easy winners there.
So this is our 8th podcast, Ozzy. That means we've done 7 total so far. How many units do you think you're up in those seven UFC events alone?
I have not counted. You
Just
put
guess.
me on the spot there.
I have the number.
Maybe close to 20, maybe
23.05 units in free advice that he's given out. You're not exactly saying I'm putting 1.15 units, but you're given the information. People have to take that information and do what they want with it. But 23 units, I'm only plus 6 units in that time. Seems like chump change. But definitely giving out tons of free winners on the podcast.
23, and guys are telling me, hey, you're not betting enough units on these things, yada yada yada. So look, I mean, people can what I do on that Bet MMA page is how I feel you can definitely confidently grow your bankroll. You could put make bigger plays there, but I personally I do bet a little bit more. I'll say, but that the unit stuff, that's a proprietary stuff. So I have that. That's why I had to put that behind the paywall a little bit, just because these lines are moving around a good amount, but I try to be really, really transparent, and all of these are real lines. Like, there's not crazy inflated. Like, I don't do parlays, none of that nonsense. This is all real stuff, guys. Real units.
Real dollars.
These are real dollars being wagered and won.
Yep. Winning rents, working on the weekend over here. So that's going to take us to the first fight on this card. We got in the featherweight division, Omar Morales minus 151, Jonathan Pearce plus 131 on Bet Online right now. I'll start this one off, and this is a pretty fun fight to start the card. Both these guys are good fighters, in my opinion. Both recently dropped down from 155, and they're doing good things at 145. Morales is kind of a medium tempo striker. Not really a lot of diversity in his striking attack, mostly just leg kicks and boxing, but the guy does that very well. JSP, on the other hand, a lot more hittable on the feet. He's kind of more of an aggressive striker, not a calculated striker like Morales. But JSP can build as the fight goes. His cardio is pretty good, and he also has some good wrestling. We saw him hit a lot of takedowns in the Contender Series. We saw him hit takedowns on Kamaka. And when the guy's on top, he is looking to do damage, pass guard, and finish you on top. So I really like that from him. And coming down into this fight, I would like to see Morales' takedown defense, but in his UFC career so far, he hasn't really faced good grapplers. And there's not much footage of him before the UFC, so not a whole lot of footage on Morales defending takedowns. The only real footage we have is the Shane Young fight, where Shane Young briefly took him down. And for minus 150 on Morales, I would like to see a lot more proven defensive grappling for me to trust him at that price. So this is going to be dog or pass for me. I'll side with JSP here as the underdog. I think his wrestling could be the deciding factor here. And JSP coming off a win off of Kamaka. I rate Kamaka pretty highly. I think you do as well. We're a big fan of Kamaka here on the podcast, and JSP got a good win on him in his last fight. So I'll be rolling with JSP, and I think he's decided to be on here as the dog. What are you thinking about this first fight on the card, Ozzy?
Yeah, so it's a great fight to open up the main card. Both guys here, Omar Morales, he's down here at 145, and I was skeptical about him, being at this weight class because honestly, the things that I think benefited him the most at 155 was his speed, and just the overall pace that he would bring. He's still unproven in the grappling realm at 145, but I do think that he does have some grappling chops. He has some decent defensive, instincts from when I do watch him. Like you said, his striking. He's kind of just looking to set up the right hand, and throw that leg kick when he faced a more nuanced and deeper striker in Giga. He wasn't really able to get going all too much. Now when he's matching up here against JSP, Pearce is a guy who can get a little bit more wild at some points. He really does. Sometimes like really dig in, like sit down into the pocket and into exchanges, quite often. But here, I think this is a great matchup potentially for him if he can get Omar to commit to strikes where he can, get in on his legs and maybe even come up to a clinch for some takedowns or just finish leg attacks. When I'm, handicapping something and I'm looking at a fighter like JSP who I think needs the grappling, needs to get the fight to the floor to win. I like seeing when, that they're competent in finishing leg attacks, singles and double legs. And I don't think it's going to be easy for him, to do it against Omar Morales at all. JSP doesn't move his head all that much. You saw, I don't know if you guys watched Contender, but yesterday Jacob Rosales, a former opponent of JSP, fought. And if you watch that fight, like JSP, just he gets hit. He's pretty hittable. And he'll definitely take a few shots here. So even if he loses the first round, like you said, I think he is definitely in the fight. Because he can finish at any point. He's very aggressive. He has strong hips once he does get on top. And he does lay down some good ground and pound. So I think at this price here, it's not unreasonable to like either side. I wouldn't play Omar as a favorite just because I think there are some holes here and there are some ways that JSP could take advantage of him. But I don't think at plus 130 it's big value. I was hoping that this would get close to plus 150. But the under here is plus 135. Although JSP is extremely tough, Omar Morales does hit very, very hard, and I think that he will be able to land here. And JSP, I do think, has some opportunity to finish as well. So if the price inflates a little bit more, I will be interested on the JSP side. But I do think that Omar Morales is the rightful favorite as it stands right now.
Yeah, good analysis there. Not really rushing to bet Pierce plus 130 as well, but if he got up to plus 150, it would definitely be more enticing. Fun first fight between the featherweights, and we're going to move on to the next fight, welterweight division. We have Matt Semelsberger minus 600 taking on Martin Sano plus 400. You could start this one off.
Yep,
What are
sure.
your thoughts about the high level Martin Sano Jr.?
Sano obviously he's 4-2 in his professional career. He would never have sniffed the UFC otherwise, other than being on this card here. He hasn't fought in what's the time in between his
Four and
fights
a half
here?
years. Four
Four and
and
a
a half
half
years,
years.
no fights. 7 years, no wins.
Yeah, so Semelsberger in his I'll just go to Semelsberger in his last fight. I thought he fought a very very difficult stylistic matchup, but looked really really good. He has crisp boxing. He had a hard time with the power that Chaos Williams is bringing to him, but I don't think that's going to be an issue for him here. I think that Sano would probably need to get this fight to the ground, but. Semelsberger is pretty decent wrestler. Trains out of a gym that is BJJ centric and foremost. So I think he's going to be able to deal with any of that, keep this guy on the end of his punches, and probably set up a right hand or a few right hands to potentially finish Sano. But Sano might have a pretty good chance. It could go to the cards, but I do think Matt will be able to land a lot of clean punches here. In route to a win.
Yeah, I mean, Sano is just so bad. Like you said, 4.5 years, no fights. That fight, he got taken down and dominated in round one. I'll give him some credit. He did kind of come back and win rounds 2 and 3 of that fight versus Herzog, but he also grabbed the fence in that fight and ended up as a draw. So you also watched the Dominic Waters fight. I mean, he was just dominated in the wrestling there. All 15 minutes was being controlled. His striking doesn't even look remotely good. I mean, it seems like he has no concept of footwork. He gets really close to you and then he gives himself up for takedowns. So I think Semelsberger really should win the fight however he wants. He can outbox him on the feet. Semelsberger should be able to easily take him down and outgrapple him as well. And I'll mention it's not really relevant to this fight, but Semelsberger, really good performance in his last fight against Williams. I think going back and rewatching that fight, you realize a lot of what Williams was throwing wasn't really landing. And there's actually a case that Semelsberger won that fight, in my opinion. So Semelsberger is just 2 or 3 notches ahead of Sano at this point, and he should win the fight however he wants, and actually has a good chance at finishing if he feels enthusiastic enough in these later rounds. That's going to take us to the next fight, which is in the lightweight division, I believe. No. We're sticking in the middleweight division. Nick Maximov taking on Cody Brundage. This fight was announced just a few hours ago, and Maximov opened around -300. The line has been bet down. We're now seeing Maximov -191, Cody Brundage +166. So I quickly taped this fight real quick, and I came to the conclusion that Brundage is just a better version of Nick Maximov. I don't think he has the same jiu-jitsu credentials that Maximov does, but I think his wrestling is better than Maximov. I think his cardio and his striking is better. We've actually seen Brundage stay on the feet and strike for multiple minutes while Maximov shoots takedowns right away in all of his fights. So we really have no idea how Maximov is going to look in the striking, but I get the feeling it's going to be pretty ugly. So Maximov's looking to get the fight to the floor. He does that in all of his fights, but I'm kind of underwhelmed with his top game. He loses position, he goes for back takes and falls off, and I don't think he's a dominant top position grappler. I've seen good things on top from Brundage. He's arm triangled a few opponents. He knows how to pass guard, hit takedowns, and I just think he's the more proven wrestler, the more proven striker, and I think he's got more ways to win. So I'll be picking Brundage straight up in this fight, even though he's coming in here on a few days' notice. I think he's winning as the underdog here. So any plus money on Brundage is value, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on these guys both making their UFC debut?
Yes, I'm very familiar with both of them, especially Maximov. I've seen all of his Submission Underground, matches and all. A concern for me here is one, obviously his striking super raw. He's not comfortable there at all. He can easily be, kept on the end of punches and forced to like just dive for takedowns and not set them up. This is the first time he's ever fighting at 185, and I've seen him, at the 205 fight in that crazy fight that he had on the Contender Series, him start to tire out. And I don't think it's to his benefit for him to be cutting down on 185 on top of that. So, I just think he's a bit inefficient with his cardio, and I just don't think his cardio I don't know. I think it might be because he gets a little anxious on the feet and all, but I do think that he has big time potential to gas here. Cody, on the other hand, his last fight was an awesome fight. I told you about. I think I was watching that live, and might have had some money on the dog there, but Cody was able to have a great round one, I believe. Have a little bit more of a competitive round two, and then come out, like you said, in round three and get that arm triangle finish. So I think this guy's a big time prospect. He trains out of, I think it's Factory X in Colorado. So he's getting a lot of training in with Dustin Jacoby. I know he says he's like a main training partner of his. And how these guys match up, I do think that Maximov is, in my opinion, I'll say that if they do, when they do lock up, Maximov is a better grappler, and that includes the wrestling. So I just feel that he has an innate ability to be able to end up on top, and I think he's a lot more comfortable when they do lock up. But not to say Cody's not a bad wrestler. I think he could probably take Maximov down if he wants. I think he'll be able to defend the takedowns as well. But I do think if they are in prolonged grappling situations, Maximov is a more comfortable guy there. But he was training for a fight himself. I think he's coming in shape. And like you said, I think this fight, them opening at -300 is kind of ridiculous. It should probably be something under 150 here on the Brundage side. Maximov doesn't have the crowd on his side, I guess. But I just think that if he ends up on the feet here, Brundage is going to be able to ice him with a collection of punches. I think he's whether it be at range, if they're in the pocket. Maximov sometimes gets a bit lazy and complacent when he's like lunging in and holding on to the clinch and all. So I think this will be a super competitive fight. I think Maximov, if he does put Cody on his back, can finish Cody there. If he's able to like stick him where Cody can't, scramble to the fence and all. But any other situations, I think Maximov is in, a decent amount of trouble. So I'll pick Cody here straight up, and we'll see when this line gets delineated out and see if we can get some action on him.
Yeah, one point I'll bring up that you mentioned, a really good point, is this is his first time cutting to 185. Is that correct? I see
Yeah.
all light heavyweight in his past. I mean, he's 209 for his last fight, so he's not a huge light heavyweight or anything, but still, you got to consider that this is his first time cutting to 185.
He's a solid dude. He's not a small, like, he could fight at 205 without 76-inch reach. He's a big boy. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like 215. Normally, so it's not gonna be an easy cut.
Yeah, no, and I just get the vibe that both these guys have been the hammer throughout most of their careers, and we're likely going to see one of them face the most adversity they've ever faced in their career. Let's hope it's Maximov, so we can cash those Brundage tickets. So that's going to move us on. In the lightweight division, we have Uros Medic as the -118 favorite, Jalen Turner -102. Fun lightweight matchup. The public has been on the dog here. Turner pushing them to almost a near favorite, near pick'em situation. So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts, Ozzy? Here, close lightweight fight.
This is a very interesting fight for me. Very interesting. So I was on the other side of Medic for his contender series, and I think also in that debut fight against Cruz. But Alon Cruz, is a former 145er. Medic, I mean, he definitely hits hard, but and he's joined with Master Rafael over there. I forget the name of their gym.
Kings MMA.
Kings MMA. There you go. Training with Benio and all those guys there. So I actually like the fit there for him. But here, I really do think like Jalen Turner, I've been skeptical about him a lot. He has not had a, really good strength of schedule other than the Luque fight. And then you saw in that Favola fight, it was just a crazy fight, them going back and forth. But this guy's got skills, man. He's got a pretty good, at range. He's got a crisp jab. He throws the cross really well. I like his reflexes and how he's quick to counter. I like his clinch game. And if he's not, grappling too much, like getting concerned with, locking up guillotines and stuff like that, like he was against Frivola, I do think that his grappling defense is okay. And Medic is just very much more unproven. His last fight was just, 6 months ago. and you didn't really learn anything from there. You didn't really learn anything in his contender series fight. So I think, the biggest thing for him is finding the chin of Turner, because Turner has shown the susceptibility to get stunned, potentially get rocked. And his defense is not the best. Like, I feel, he is open to the counter a little bit. And because he is a little bit more high volume, Medic and his very aggressive style will be able to get that going. He also his last fight was at a catch weight, so he's down at 155. So I'm interested to see, does Medic at some point, if he's chucking out those left bombs and all, and maybe not having the success in landing it because of the reach disadvantage, does he end up trying to take it down Turner? And how committed is Turner to digging underhooks here? But this betting line is weird to me. I would think that Turner would be the favorite and open the favorite. So I don't know why they opened him to dog. Like, I don't know if it's someone is really high on the Medic and they've seen him training and stuff like that, and he's been endorsed, if you know what I mean, a little bit more behind the scenes. So I'm gonna be careful a little bit here and not try to not see rate Turner too much, and think that he's should be like a pretty big favorite here. But from my eyes looking at this, if Medic isn't knocking Turner out early with some of these combinations that he's practicing and stuff, I do think that Turner probably should be the favorite here. But I'm not going to get too over my skis here. But I do like Turner here to just mix it up, be able to use the clinch and tire Medic out, who is, I don't think he's ever even been out of the first round. So yeah, that's my viewpoint on that fight.
Yeah, I view Medic in a pretty similar way. You mentioned whoever opened this line. I'm pretty sure whoever opened this line um, isn't actually watching a whole lot of tape on Medic. They're seeing a bunch of round one finishes in a row. He's coming off the contender series pretty recently, and the market just loves to overrate these fighters. We see him on a regular basis, but this line's actually pretty close. So it seems like the public is respecting the more experience and well-roundedness of Jalen Turner, and I'm going to be siding with Turner here as well. Um, you know, there are these striking prodigies we see every now and then that are actually like looking good, like Melsik Baghdasaryan, for example. I don't think Medic is that type of guy. I don't think he's really proven to that level. Seeing his striking, he throws his strikes from a really far distance. I mean, sometimes he'll be throwing his kicks from such a far range, and he covers a really long range, but I don't think the guy has much of a boxing game. He likes just kicking from the outside and landing long straight shots. But I'm really interested to see how he's going to look in like actually competitive striking exchanges. And I think that's going to be the first time in his MMA career that we've seen a guy not be scared of his striking. Turner has that same long frame. He's got that southpaw stance as well. He throws really good kicks and straight punches. And I think Turner is going to be really competitive in these striking exchanges. And you've got to give Turner the experience advantage, the cardio advantage, and I think the grappling advantage as well. From what we've seen of Medic, he has not looked like a good grappler. We've seen him taken down. We've seen him spend multiple minutes on his back. Now, it's not like Turner is some reliable wrestler who's going to put Medic on his back. But if the fight ends up on the floor, I think Turner will prove that he's the better grappler and possibly be live for a submission, like we saw in his last fight. So I think the striking is going to be really competitive, maybe a slight edge to Medic, but in terms of cardio, grappling, and experience, I give Turner the edge there. So I'll be picking the more well-rounded and experienced guy. And Medic knocking him out in round one wouldn't completely shock me. But I would be impressed if Medic won anyway besides round one knockout. If the fight goes out of round one and Medic wins, consider me impressed, because I think that rounds 2 and 3 favors Turner pretty heavily here. So I'll be picking Turner. Haven't quite locked in a bet on him, but might end up with some action on him if he stays plus money. Um, that's going to move us along to the next fight, the first of several female fights in the women's flyweight division. We have Talia Santos as the minus 450 favorite, taking on Roxanne Modafferi plus 350. Roxanne is always getting underrated by the market. That's nothing new, but I'm still a bit surprised how wide this line is. Do you feel the same way, Ozzy?
Mean, yeah, man, a bit. And I think that Tyler Santos is legit, but and maybe it's because Roxy's coming off a knee surgery as well. Like, I think she tore her ACL, but yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a wide line. Very, very respectful.
Yeah, that makes sense because she looks like she was fighting with a torn ACL in a past of her few fights. I mean, she just looks so noodly and awkward in the striking. It's crazy. But the main concern here from Santos has to be the Barella fight. I know it was her UFC debut. I know it was like 2.5 years ago, but the weaknesses that she showed in that fight could end up with her losing this fight against Roxanne because she was put against the cage in that fight. She was taken down, spent a good amount of time on her back there, and Barella is a terrible fighter. I think that was the last fight Barella won in the UFC, honestly. Um, and she's been pretty much dominated for the rest of her career ever since then. Santos has looked a lot better in her McCann fight, the Robertson fight, but um, I just think those fights were kind of a walk in the park for her. Neither woman put up much resistance, especially Jillian Robertson's dumbass, who is jumping armbar, jumping guillotine, just looking as worse as humanly possible. But in that fight, we saw Talia go for an inverted triangle. You remember that, Ozzy? That's kind of a big red flag for me. How are you on top of someone and out grappling them for the first 7 or 8 minutes of the fight, and then you willingly fall to your back to try to go for an inverted triangle? That's just a dumb grappling decision there that I think kind of shows that Santos isn't that polished of a grappler. She's still making some questionable decisions in the grappling. So when the fight stays in the feet, there's no question of who's going to win. It's going to be Santos. She's going to be controlling the striking. But if Roxanne can get in the clinch here, get that body lock takedown going, and Roxanne can get on top, she has a really good path to victory here with having the better top game than Talia possibly. So with Talia's weaknesses off of her back, there's no way I would lay minus 450 on her. No way I would recommend putting her in a parlay. And the money line value is all over Roxanne here. And lastly, thing I'll say is for a fight that I expect to have a lot of grappling, the fight ends by submission on either side here is plus 650. So that's an interesting prop here. And I'll pass this one over to you. What are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, man, the more I think about this fight, and I like Talia Santos. I, was able to, take advantage of, like you said, her UFC debut, her not looking great, and parlaying that into, those two very good spots versus McCann and Robertson. But the more I think about this fight, the more I think that this is going to be a close fight because Roxanne, you could hate on her all you want, but the girl comes out very aggressive. She comes forward. She's not shy to get hit. I think maybe with her new knee now, maybe she's moving a little bit better. But the thing is, she's just uber aggressive. She'll literally run forward at you, throwing punches and all. And I think that Santos will, one, exchange, and two, probably look for some grappling and takedowns and stuff like that. And that puts Roxanne in a place where she can use, some of her game to slow Tyler down, maybe get to some sleeping positions, maybe get to some submissions, and just make it an ugly fight. And when it's an ugly fight like that, holding a plus 350 is pretty good. Overall, Santos, I do think that she is pretty legit. I think she can beat a lot of these girls at 125. She's got pretty good wrestling instincts. I feel when she is shooting in that she's shown in those last two fights. Can she get a little bit more, a little overzealous in the grappling for sure? But her clinch game is also pretty solid. She is able to get that tie clinch, throw pretty solid knees, and she has good power behind some of her shots. So she has a good amount of finishes. But I do think that it's very very difficult to finish Roxanne. Betting on Roxanne never feels good, but you usually don't regret it once you do. I did regret having action on her versus Viviani, but that was more so because Viviani was just beating her up so bad that it made me feel bad about it. But if you think like Roxanne was she was close to like even money against Lauren Murphy. And I remember I was looking at that and I thought, I was like, well, like Lauren Murphy, I got Lauren Murphy at like plus money and she ended up going off as the favorite. But if you're getting her here, like this is the best price you've ever gotten Roxanne, other than since
Barber.
the Macy Barber fight. Yeah, so against Andrea Lee, Viviani, Lauren Murphy. So there's much worse ways to invest your money here. It's open minus 225, and now it's at like 450. I'll probably end up with a little bit of action on Roxanne, because I do think you could potentially live bet out of this, because Roxanne, I think, is going to have a good round one. She's been out for a good amount of time. Like I said, she had that knee injury, so I think. Well, I guess she wasn't out that long. Well, whatever. But I think I don't know how she came back so fast from her knee injury. That's actually a red flag. But whatever, like, doesn't matter. She probably just got stuff cut out of her knee, not repaired, which is fine as well. And yeah, I'll probably have a little bit on her, but yeah, it's never a good feeling, to be honest. It's never a good feeling, but I definitely can't advise parlaying Tyler Santos, because I think this could be a gritty fight that Roxanne, wins a round, and
Yeah, sorry if
even
you
if
heard.
Santos wins.
Sorry if you heard some noise. I'm doing some research on Roxanne's Instagram right now, trying to see when she got this surgery. I mean, she's been at jiu-jitsu for the past several months, so like you said, it was probably not one of those full replacements, just like a minor
It's like
surgery.
arthroscopic, yeah. Like they just snip something else. It might have not been a torn ACL, but some of these people are fighting on torn ACLs nowadays. 'Cause it's crazy. But yeah,
Yep. Well, we'll be cheering for Roxy. Always a fun underdog to cheer for, and probably don't think too much about this one. Just small bet on Roxy and move on. That's going to take us to the next fight in the heavyweight division. Really fun fight here between Philadelphia's finest Chris Daukaus minus 205, Shamil Abdurakhimov making his UFC comeback here. 2 years with no fights for Shamil. I'll let you start this one off. What are you thinking about the first of two heavyweight fights on this card?
yeah, man, this is a fight where, I'm definitely waiting a little bit to see the weigh-ins, just because Shamil's been out so long. He totally, totally fucked me in that last fight when I had the over in the Curtis Blaydes fight, and he like quit basically like 5 seconds left, 8 seconds left on that. But, Shamil has had a pretty good UFC career, man. He lost that fight to Curtis Blaydes, which I give him I'm not saying I give him a pass, but it's really tough fighting a wrestler like that in that heavyweight division. And this guy, he can move his head. He throws pretty good punches. He's got like you'll see him throwing spinning back fists, spinning back kicks. Like he's well rounded overall. He lost that Derek Lewis fight in those championship rounds, but that fight was just, I mean, that was like the begin. That was like a throwback to like when you would see a main event. And you're like, what is this main event? And it went as he thought. I think he was winning the fight a little bit, and ended up getting finished there at the end. And Black
Didn't he
Beast.
beat Travis Brown over 5 rounds? Wasn't that him who Shamil? Didn't he?
No, it wasn't Shamil. Shamil hasn't
Uh,
been around that long. But maybe I'm wrong. But
no,
but
you're
I
right.
think
You're right.
that, yeah. But I think Shamil here. I can't be investing in Dawkins here at this price when he's come into UFC, and he beat Parker Porter on that short notice and finished him at the end of the first round. But who knows what happens if that fight goes deeper. Against Nascimento, he was a big underdog there. I was all over him at that price. He was a plus like
For
200 or
sure.
something.
Yeah.
But
Plus
I was all,
240.
yeah, plus 240. But that was a spot like this dude doesn't,
He had his win condition.
he just hit his win condition. Rodrigo was getting beat up by that French dude the other day on the feet. Has no striking, terrible striker, and then he beat up old man Olenek. And you see what if you beat up old man Olenek like Spivak, that don't mean nothing about your stand up. So I think that Shamil here, he'll be able to take some of these punches from Dawkins. Like Dawkins is still I saw him looking like Michael Chiesa, but he's a smaller guy, man. He weighed in at 234 last time. He's probably even smaller than that. He might be like 225 now. He might be small. But I want to see what Shamil's looking like. He's been in the 250s before. Dawkins is built on speed, but Shamil can move well as well. I think that he can probably extend this fight, and if he gets Dawkins on his back, I know you're from Philly, and Dawkins is a black belt and all that, but I'm a little skeptical, if you know what I mean. Like
Oh,
if
he'll
you're a
be in
black
trouble. He'll be in
if you're
trouble if he's
if
on
you're
his
a
back.
black belt and stuff, and you're a heavyweight and all, like I should see you probably dominating, or some like grappling footage of you. There is really none of Dawkins. I saw him fight in another legend, Zoo. I'm not even gonna.
Zuanua, yeah.
Yeah, I think Zoo had him on his back there, so I'm super skeptical. I like Shamil here. I think I'm gonna bet him. The price is at plus 180, but I think I have to invest in Shamil. One of my guys who's very sharp likes the over here. I'm not all the way in on that yet. You know, I hate heavyweight overs. You know that very well as much as anyone. And I'll kick it over to you. So I think you've looked into this fight a little bit more. For me, it's just the price here with Shamil. I need to be involved because I don't think that Daukaus is quite a top 15 for sure lockdown heavyweight, and this is definitely even higher treatment than that.
Yeah, it's kind of a cliche expression, but I think a lot of recency bias is going in this line. I mean, Shamil lost his last fight, got finished in his last fight, hasn't fought in 2 years. Meanwhile, Daukaus been in the UFC a little over a year, 3 first-round finishes, knocking everybody out, and really had no adversity in those first 3 fights either. I mean, maybe Parker Porter hit him with a few shots, but they've been kind of best case scenario outcomes for Daukaus, and I think this fight's going to be different than that. Daukaus, the last time the fight went out of round 1, he lost the fight by knockout in round 2. So I'm not firmly saying that Daukaus has bad cardio, but it's definitely fair to raise the question of, does he have good cardio? Does he sustain that striking attack in rounds 2 and 3? And he's not really proven to do so. Shamil, on the other hand, has one decisions over Andre Arlovski, finished Marcin Tybura in round 2. So the later the fight goes, the better it is for Shamil. And I do believe Shamil is the side here as well. You brought up a lot of good points about Shamil's skill set, but the guy's a competent striker, a competent wrestler. He can do good damage on top, and I don't think he's really going to be blown out of the water in any aspect here. I think you got to have a small bet on Shamil to start, and then be ready to fire at that live line, because the first 2 or 3 minutes you do got to favor Daukaus. He's been more active. He's a fast starter. The guy throws hands early. He likes to get in your face and land strikes early. So it's pretty safe to assume that Daukaus is gonna maybe jump out to an early lead here. We might see Shamil plus 200. And then we might even see Daukaus just wipe him out in round 1. Maybe Shamil is kind of done. So that way you only have a small bet on Shamil, and plan to add maybe midway through at the end of round 1. And I think that, if this fight goes into rounds 2 and 3, Daukaus probably isn't going to be justifying that minus 200. So pure pick wise, I guess I'll go Daukaus. I think this should be a little closer to minus 150 for Daukaus. And, I think that people are kind of writing Shamil off a little bit too early here, coming off that inactivity. And especially coming off the Blaydes loss. I mean, Blaydes is a nightmare matchup for anybody, like you said. And take away that, the guy's got 2 wins over Arlovski and Tybura, which are 2 really good wins. So I like Shamil here as well from a betting perspective. First time I think I'm betting against Daukaus in the UFC, but I think it's got to be done. Value is value, and the value is on Shamil here, and that's going to take us to.
Hold on, let me just one more time
ahead.
to just put in perspective. This is Daukaus. His debut was 13 months ago. If you told anyone 13 months ago that Daukaus would be a minus 200 favorite against Shamil, they'd be like, "There's no effing chance." And Daukaus is potentially a light heavyweight. You got to take Shamil here.
But I will say his win over Parker Porter is aging like fine wine, as Parker Porter has proven to be an elite pound for pound level talent. Winning back-to-back fights plus 175. We love Parker Porter over here. So
Shamil might be a Parker Porter on steroids. To be fair, Shamil's like the same kind of guy. Shamil's like the same kind of dude.
Parker Porter doesn't need steroids, though. I mean, he's so much of a man. He's so much of a powerhouse on his own. That's going to take us to a great fight in the lightweight division. This is as good as prelims get, man. What a fight here. In the lightweight division, we got Dan Hooker minus 145, Hooker-Haqparast plus 125. Got to give a little bit of a prequel here. Both these guys having trouble getting to the United States. Let's hope this fight actually takes place on Saturday night. I think Hooker has got the clearance to travel. Meanwhile, Nasrat is still in the process of getting approved. So hopefully this fight happens. Maybe they'll move it up and catch weight. Maybe they'll postpone it a week. But this is a fun matchup. And going through these guys' fights, I noticed that the Nasrat's UFC career has been so weird. He's faced a lot of easy matchups. When he faced a step up in competition in Doper, he got iced. And then he goes right back to fighting nobodies like Alex Munoz and Rafa Garcia. So I don't think we've really seen Nasrat fight a nasty orthodox boxer, good striker like Dan Hooker. Meanwhile, we have seen Hooker face a southpaw boxer, most notably Dustin Poirier. He won 2 rounds off of Dustin Poirier. And had a lot of good ideas versus a southpaw boxer. He was smashing that inside leg kick from the opposite stances. He was throwing in combination. He likes mixing up combos to the head and body, like how he knocked out James Vick. And I just think that Dan Hooker is a more proven striker against high level fighters. I'm not going to say Iquinta's high level, but he has outstruck Iquinta and close fights with Poirier and Felder. He's been around with those top 10 strikers, while Nasrat really hasn't. The best striker he's fought was Dober, who was able to find the chin in about 60 seconds there. So I'm just not quite willing to trust Nasrat in such a high step up in competition. I mean, the difference, you know this well, Ozzy. The difference between Dan Hooker and Rafa Garcia might as well be night and day.
Big.
So I got a favorite in the New Zealander here. Like I said, let's hope this fight takes place. I mean, these guys sound like they're going through some brutal circumstances right now, trying to get their fights booked. But let's hope this fight happens. And, should be a fun striking fight. I like both these guys a lot, but I got to go with the more proven fighter. And to me, is Dan Hooker. So I like Hooker to win a decision here, 29-28, something like that.
I got a good deal of thoughts about this fight, man. Like, I was going into it, I was, looking for, especially hearing Hooker's travel situation, I was looking for reasons to like Nasrat. Some reasons there, like you look at Hooker's record in decisions, not very good. I think it's like 1-3 or some. Let me confirm that super quick. Yeah, 3-6. Excuse me, 3-6. But a lot of these fights happen at 145. If the Felder fight, if the Poirier fight was 3 rounds, he would have won that fight. And he's had a lot of success here at 155. I was against him against Michael Chandler when we were getting that plus price. But think about this. Hooker was minus 145, minus 150 consensus.
Same price, yeah.
Against Michael Chandler. And here Nasrat, like, I guess like people are seeing maybe the stylistic nature that Nasrat could give him an issue with the left hand. Hooker has shown, he's a little short on the defense, if that makes sense to some people, where he is in that angle to get hit with the left hand quite often. But Nasrat, like a lot of, he's picked up some knockdowns, but guys have taken his punches, like, on several occasions. And I don't think that he's putting Dan Hooker out here. Hooker's got a great clinch game. Both if you give it to him or in pursuit of that clinch game, he has takedowns as well from the body lock. He could even hit a double leg. He took down Paul Felder. He took down Dustin Poirier. Nasrat definitely is pretty explosive and all, but just I think the circumstances around his situation are probably even a bit worse than Dan Hooker's. If I'm being honest, if how I'm looking at it, I think that Hooker has the ability to push harder in these later rounds. That if Nasrat, he started off slow a few times. The Silva fight, he started off slow. The Rafa Garcia, I think he lost. When I watched that fight, I scored the first round for Rafa Garcia, and then he wavered there. Alex Munoz has no ability to strike really, and then he got iced by Drew Dober. So the first and only time he ever fought a guy who was not scared of him and was able to throw back in the pocket, he got knocked out pretty quickly. So I don't like Nasrat's shot selection that much. I think that Hooker here with the kicks, I think is also a big advantage to him. I think his submission game could play a role here, and I think that Dan Hooker's coming in focused here. He's coming in hungry. He doesn't want. He doesn't want to lose 3 fights in a row, especially taking all the BS that he has to go through with this Australia stuff. So I like him here. I'm not super enthused to lay the juice on him. There is one one bet I did make on this fight thus far, and I took Haqparast by decision at plus 350. I think that is a big part of how he would win this fight. Like I said, I don't think that he's gonna be knocking Hooker out here. And I think that that is a mispriced prop line. But I do like Dan Hooker here. I think that he'll be able to land a jab. His straight shots, I think, are better, and I think he'll be able to frustrate Nasrat. And once Nasrat does get frustrated, I think that it'll play into Hooker's hands between his knees, the clinch, and the kicks that he's going to be able to throw out there. But I do see this being a very competitive fight, and Hooker does need to watch out for that left hand, but. What else does he have to look out for from Nasrat? I don't know. So I like the Dan Hooker side here. And Nasrat, it's not like Nasrat has an easy time making 155. I forgot who he was supposed to fight last time, but he had a fight scheduled and Arman. Yeah, Arman. He had that fight scheduled and he dropped out of it because he couldn't make weight. It was
I don't think that's true. I think because that's why Rafa Garcia came in. It was supposed to be Nasrat versus Arman, and then Arman fell out. And then
there was another fight that Nasrat was gonna fight. He dropped out because he couldn't make weight. I remember it.
Don Madge, maybe? No. Oh no. I think it is Arman. I think you're right. You're right. He was okay. Fuck it.
It might be just like not coming out. It was UFC 257. Yeah, it was. That's what it was.
Yeah,
UFC 257. He was supposed to fight. So I'm questionable about in a fight where he has to push hard, and I know Dan Hooker's a dog, man, in a dog fight there. So
yeah, good point about the Nasrat decision. I think that's his most likely outcome by a pretty wide margin. And Hooker, no scorecards, also minus 145. I think he's way more likely to finish. That's going to take us to the last prelim on the card. Another great prelim fight. Merab-Moraes taking on Marlon-Moraes. Merab minus 256, Moraes plus 216. Of course, this is in the bantamweight division. And you could start this one off, Ozzy. What are you thinking about this fight?
Yeah, so really interesting fight how it came together here. Obviously, Merab is training up there with the Serra Longo team. Moraes used to train with Ricardo Almeida. And there's a little tiny bit of a connection there. Obviously, Marlon is, on a bad run right here for the most part. 3 of his last 4, he lost. But, obviously very top tier guys he was fighting there. And he's coming in here against a guy Merab who nobody wants to fight at all. The wrestling on Merab is just a bitch to handle. That pace that he's at, and I think that in that last fight against Cody, he showed some better striking. I liked how he was looking in the pocket. I think he's coming into this fight super focused. I'm not, I was saying earlier in the week, I was thinking about laying the juice on Merab just because he's been so dominant and he's so consistent. But here against Marlon is definitely dangerous. I think he'll like you said, I try to handicap these and look to it. How is this guy? Is this guy going to come in and have a better performance than in his last few? And I do think that Marlon is going to look pretty good. I think he's going to be able to fire off some of these inside low kicks. I think will be a big thing for him and looking to stick the jab early on. And I don't think Merab is going to force the wrestling too early here because he knows that if he can draw this fight out a little bit more, watch that left head kick from Marlon, that it's going to be a big advantage to him. But I'm not parlaying Merab. I think that Marlon does have an opportunity to win this fight, even if it maybe goes a little bit later. I see he's been working his wrestling with the kid from ATT that's in Bellator now, Danny Sabatello. He's at ATT, so I think he's coming in here prepared. But Merab, on the other hand, that whole Serra Longo team is so hungry right now. They're hitting on all cylinders. And you'll see that in the next pay-per-view, a little precursor there to where the bantamweight champions going to remain. And I think that I think that they've got a good energy going on over there. I saw that he has a old striking coach of mine in that was a sparring partner to mirror Merab, and I think I mean mirror Marlon, and I think it's a great look for him in that. And I think that Merab's coming in here super prepared. I think he's looking to make a statement potentially, and I think that he potentially could finish this at some point because Marlon's just his gas tanks look so bad, and if you put him on a back foot, he's been really, really susceptible. But you've got to look out for this guy throwing knees and those kicks going backwards while Marlon is in while Merab is in heavy pursuit. So I'll pick Merab.
Kind of a tough fight to break down because Marlon hasn't faced a wrestler like Merab in so long. Throughout his entire UFC career, he's really been fortunate not to run into many wrestlers. So it's hard to know how Marlon is going to look defending these takedowns, but it's hard to imagine him having success defending those takedowns for long periods of time. I mean, Merab takes down pretty much anyone he wants to, and I see no reason to think that Marlon can stop that, honestly. So I think Merab will get some takedowns. He's never a big top position guy, never holds people down for long periods of time, but he hits those takedowns. He grinds you out against the cage. And I think that that's a good way to wear Marlon down. I think Marlon is really only fresh for the first like 3 or 4 minutes of a fight, and then really starts to wilt after that and loses a lot of power behind his shots. And as long as Merab can fight with kind of a risk mitigation technique in round one, really watch out for that left head kick. Watch out for that good guillotine of Moraes when he's shooting his takedowns. I think if he can avoid getting finished in round one, rounds 2 and 3 really heavily favor him. The pace he puts on people, the nonstop pressure, and Merab's striking is steadily improving. I was picking and betting John Dodson to beat him. And, he actually outboxed John Dodson for most of that fight, didn't wrestle as much as he typically does in his fights, and really proved that his striking is improving as well. So I think that the nonstop output in the striking, the takedown attempts, the nonstop cardio of Merab is just too good to be picking against him here. And Moraes is likely going to need a round one finish if he wants to win the fight at all. And it's seeming like Moraes is kind of shot. I don't think the guy is the fighter he once was, taking knockouts in back-to-back fights. I think, there's a good chance that he never will return to the fighter he once was. So I like Merab here, and a good prop I bet for this fight. Danny Lags discovered this one, but it's Merab knockout or decision -135. I'm not sure why the price is that narrow. Merab's submission seems really low possibility to me, so I like that a lot. It's a lot better price than money line, and I think Merab's going to win this one pretty comfortably as long as he doesn't get his head kicked off in the first round. So Moraes round one combined with that Merab knockout decision prop seems like a good way to guarantee profit here. And that's going to take us to the main card. The first of 5 fights takes place in the women's flyweight division. We have Jessica Andrade as the -255 favorite, Cynthia Calvillo coming back at +215. And Andrade should have the advantage everywhere here, in my opinion. She's not a super technical, methodical striker, but she hits so hard. She's a great pressure fighter. She knows how to dig to the body really well. She's so damaging in the feet that she doesn't need to have that clean technique that most fighters do. She's so powerful that she can really make up for that disparity in her skill with that power. So I think the striking is going to favor Andrade here. Andrade has the better offensive wrestling of the two. I think that was pretty quickly proven by the Chookagian fights where we saw Calvillo really struggle to take Chookagian down and got stuck at range, was just getting picked apart by Chookagian for most of that fight at range. Meanwhile, Andrade bullied her way into the clinch, took Chookagian down a few times, and eventually finished her with that body shot in round one. And I just think that Andrade has recovered everywhere. The only area I see Andrade having some trouble here is the wrestling. We saw Shevchenko put on a wrestling clinic versus Andrade in her last fight. If Calvillo replicates that same game plan, she could have success, but her wrestling is not as good as Shevchenko's. Her top game isn't as good. And Andrade actually stood up from a lot of those takedowns from Shevchenko. So even if Calvillo gets her down, I think Andrade will be so athletic and explosive that she's going to be hard to hold down. So it's hard to see Calvillo having any sustained success here. And if you like Calvillo, just better by decision, plus 490. I don't think that she's the type of fighter to finish Andrade. Only really elite fighters can finish Andrade um, with big power on the feet. And just Calvillo is not that type. So Calvillo decision plus 490. I think that's a good bet, even though I don't have much faith in her. Andrade should win this one pretty comfortably, probably cover her price tag as well. What are you thinking about this one? You think the line's wide here?
I do think it is a little much here because these flyweight girls, they're just so volatile, and it's evident by like just overreactions all the time take place. In Cynthia Calvillo's last fight, you saw she had that like decision win over Jessica I, where she's a pick'em, and then like 2 months later, she's plus or minus 240 over Chukagian. That was like one of the best bets I've ever made on Chukagian decision. It's like plus 300. But here I think just the thing is, if Cynthia can have any grappling success, I think that Jessica just does not show. I was disappointed in seeing her ground game in that last fight because she just not does not really show great instincts on the ground. Even though she is a jiu-jitsu black belt, a lot of her stuff is just being super strong and getting top position and all. And Cynthia is a tricky girl on the ground. She has a lot of finesse to her game. She knows how to attack with her underhooks and keep her underhooks to keep ground control and get to better positions, whether that be in the clinch or on the ground. And she's sneaky and getting to the back. So I don't like this price on Jessica Andrade. I do think that on the feet and stuff. The thing is, when she is in heavy pursuit and all, like Chukagian is just so noodly, and she doesn't really look to get the fight back on her pace. Which I do think that Jessica or Cynthia does have that ability to do that. I think she's able. She knows how to slow the fight down if she needs to. She has a jab. She has some stuff to use there, but it's gonna be difficult for her because she does not have any power to keep Jessica off of her at all. And when you go from facing Valentina and looking across at that stone cold killer to looking across at Cynthia Calvillo, you have to be really happy about that. So that's another thing there. But I do think potentially here, I don't think I'm gonna get too involved in this fight. Maybe if Cynthia's price wanders out a little bit more, I'll take a little stab. But like you said, that decision, line is not bad. But I do think this fight, probably does go over. Cynthia's pretty tough. Like, I don't think she's gonna fold easily, even if Jessica's like bombing on her with punches. She might just even pull guard. Like if it's getting, overwhelming to her. She's never been finished in her in her MMA career at all. And I don't think that, Jessica, even though she is very, very aggressive, she is sometimes patient coming in and stuff. So I do think that this potentially this has the potential to hit the cards, because I don't think that Cynthia is going to want to throw an exchange with her. So I think it'll be tough for Jessica to get a finish because of that, because she's not a girl that really sets up a lot of her punches. When she does get finishes, it's like her hitting a counter, like it was against Carolina and the Chukagian punch, right? Both of those came where I think they weren't looking for that shot. I think it was like a exiting out in after an exchange, and I think Cynthia is in the look to skirt around and avoid prolonged striking exchanges.
Nice. So sounds like you have a little more confidence in Calvillo than I do. But that decision prop is pretty good. Even though I don't think it's going to win, I might bet it anyway.
Like
Um,
the goes the distance is not a bad price or the over, so I think I'll probably find my way on something like that for action.
Yeah, I mean, GGD is what, plus 110 or something? Yeah, I mean, if it's good.
And it says minus. It's still minus
Oh,
120.
yeah,
I
you're
see
right,
is the
you're right.
best price.
Yeah, so I mean, if goes the distance is favored, then why is Calvillo decision 5-1 nearly? It doesn't make much sense.
Right.
So next fight, heavyweight division, Curtis Blaydes minus 310, Jairzinho Rozenstruik plus 260. You could start this one off, Ozzy. I doubt you'll have any groundbreaking analysis to this one.
Yeah, man. Obviously Blades is coming in here off that, crazy knockout in his last fight. Jairzinho, hit that buzzer beater in his last fight. So, obviously Blades here, he's looking to get this fight to the ground. I think if this is on the feet, Jairzinho, it hits really hard, probably one of the biggest hitters at heavyweight. He has a pretty nice diverse, diverse enough. Like he can knock you out with either hand from whichever angle. Like he can land a jab and knock you out. He can land uppercuts, hooks from everywhere. This guy could hit you. He probably even has some kicks in here that he can mix up. But he's a complete turtle on his back. I don't think he's offering much get up ability at all, unless he could potentially maybe find his back to the fence, like go down, just not all the way. And if Blades is able to wrist ride this guy, I think he'll be able to potentially get him out of there. But the thing with Blades is, a lot of times he's wrist riding these guys. Some of these wrestlers, why don't they ever put in hooks? I don't understand. Like when you put in hooks and you put those hips in, these guys should look at Dayton Fix, Oklahoma State wrestler for you casuals. Put those hooks in, flatten that guy out, and finish him. These guys, they'll be behind him, just throwing these punches, and then the guys will get up, and then they'll have to put them back down and put the freaking legs in. It's not that hard, and flatten the guy out. But anyway, I digress. I think that Blades should win this fight. I think if he attaches himself to a leg of Jairzinho at any time, Jairzinho is not going to be able to defend the takedown. And that's like my analysis of the fight. I don't need to go too far into it. But if Blades is on the feet here, for any prolonged stretch, I hate it. I'm not paying minus 300. I know some of my guys are like, man, this is a parlay booster. Like, this is a money line booster. Like, this is an easy win. But, I don't lay juice on these heavyweight fights, man. It just, weird things happen. Guys don't follow the game plan. Guys just fall down from one punch. It's too much for me. I'm not involved. So I'll kick it to you.
Well, he is minus 310 now, and Cyril Gahn was minus 310 for his last fight, so maybe there's a little bit of good luck there. Same thoughts as you, obviously. The striking favors Rozenstruik, but Blades isn't going to be completely out of his depth in the striking. But if you're Blades, why strike at all? You could shoot a low single leg with no setup and probably get Rozenstruik down pretty easily here. Rozenstruik's frame is just not built to wrestle. He does not have the skill to escape bottom. Just not a great grappler. Simple as that. And he's fighting a tremendous wrestler, a guy who, once he gets on top, can unleash nasty ground and pound. It's a bit of a curious case with Curtis Blaydes, because some fights he likes to hit takedowns and just like chill on top and coast to a decision, and then sometimes he actually feels like finishing you. And like when he actually does throw strikes, he is pretty brutal on top. That Shamil knockout, the Overeem knockout, most notably. So I feel like if Blades shows some enthusiasm here, he should get the TKO. Rozenstruik doesn't have the ability to get off his back, especially with Blades on top of him. So if Blades just throws a few strikes after the takedown, it should be a TKO here. So I'll go with Blades TKO round 2 here. It's kind of just a question of Blades by finish or Blades by decision. I really don't think Rozenstruik can win this fight. And if you like Rozenstruik, just take him by knockout, take him by round 1 knockout, because I don't think he can win the fight any other way. And that's going to do it for this fight. Going to take us to the next fight, which is the first of 3 5-round fights. This is a non-title middleweight fight, a rematch, 17 years in the making. We got Robbie Lawler as the minus 125 favorite, taking on Nick Diaz plus 105. A little bit of action came in on Robbie Lawler the past 24 hours. After Nick Diaz did some interviews, that video of him came out where he's shadow boxing, getting his picture taken. Definitely looks a bit old, but you can't put too much stock into speculative things like that, like interviews and whatnot. But obviously a very difficult fight to break down. You got two severely past their prime fighters here. Nick Diaz, no fights in 6.5 years, no wins in almost 10 years. Robbie Lawler lost 4 or 5 fights in a row, got dominated in most of them. But you got to give Lawler some slack because he is facing like top 10 welterweights, RDA, Covington, Neil Magny. I'm sure all those guys would dunk on Nick Diaz as well. But it's we have seen Robbie Lawler look bad recently. Like there's kind of some speculation on how Nick Diaz will look. Will he, will that layoff maybe be good for him? I mean, there's certainly no chance that Nick Diaz improves, right? Like he's not going to be better than he was 6 years ago, but he might return to that same form. Meanwhile, with Lawler, I mean, we have seen him look bad. We've seen him get, outboxed, out wrestled by Colby Covington. We saw him get bombed down by RDA. Neil Magny out grappled him really badly. So Lawler has not looked like himself recently. It looks like he's pretty rapidly deteriorating in there. Just doesn't have that same tenacity, that same aggression that he once did. When you're looking at the Neil Magny fight, he had to win that fight at distance. He was getting out grappled at range, or he was getting out grappled throughout most of the fight. And you'd think that he would make the striking exchanges at range count. You'd think he'd be trying to get a knockout or something, but he just didn't have that fight left in him. So this will be his most forgiving matchup that he's faced in several years, but I kind of think the matchup favors Nick Diaz because I think he's got the better style for an old guy. He was a southpaw boxer who plots forward, who throws hands, who throws the occasional leg kick, not a very athletically demanding style. So the fact that he hasn't fought in 6 or 7 years, he's 38 years old now. I don't think that's the worst case for him because his style doesn't require like a fresh body. He's going to be boxing in there. There's nothing else that he's going to do. I don't think any type of grappling is expected in this fight from either side. I expect a 5-round competitive striking fight. And I think the safest bet here is the fight going the distance. I think both of them, or I know both of them don't have that big one-punch power. They've never been known for that. And both are fighting at 185, not having to cut as much weight. And I just don't think we're going to see knockouts here. I don't think we're going to see either guy hurt. And, it's really hard to imagine a finish on either side here. I guess Lawler finish is the more likely of the two, but the goes the distance is hanging around minus 130. I think that's the bet to be on here. I got on fight starts round 3 on a little bit of a line error on FanDuel. They had that hanging at minus 205 for a few days there, so I was able to get that. And still, I think the fight going the distance is value. It's minus 130 currently. That means the fight finishes by 45% of the time. I think that number is batshit crazy. So I'll be picking Nick Diaz to win a decision here. 3 rounds to 2, 4 rounds to 1, and GTD is the best bet. So what are your thoughts here, Ozzy?
And Nick Diaz is fucking back. I'm not going to believe it until I see the fucker in the cage, or at least walking out to the cage. But I mean, I'm a massive Nick Diaz fan. Like when I first started watching MMA, a long time ago, about 15, 16 years back. I think the first fight of his that I watched live was that insane fight against Diego Sanchez. And guys, do yourself a favor. Give this guy the respect. Go watch his fights, and to be honest, his best fights are some of his losses. Like the stretch that he went through, the Diego Sanchez, Joe Riggs, Sean Shirk fight, those fights, I think that's for a guy that lost all of those, like 3 of my favorite fights of all time. The Carl Parisian fight. I mean, this guy, Nick Diaz, has had an amazing career. That was around the time when I first started training in jiu-jitsu, and I was, just enamored. When he beat Takanori Gomi, I think I was up at like midnight or whatever time it was, at Japanese time, the difference. And I found some bullshit.
That fight took place in America, sorry.
Whatever, my bad. But it was Pride, so I found the stream. I found it was a Jap, he being up talking Origomi. I think that was the last event that Pride had, maybe second to last. But I found a stream and I was like, holy dude, I mean, you guys don't understand. The next day we're at training and everybody's going for go-go platas. You got guys that training for like, everybody's trying to say, oh, this is how you do the go-go plata. No, this is how you do the go-go plata. It was crazy, man. And he went on to go to Strike Force and Elite FC and XC, and unfortunate end of the career, I would say, with kind of like how it got set up and his comeback here to UFC and all. But I mean, let's just get into the matchup because I'm a super big Nick Diaz fan.
Fanboy, yeah.
Huge fan. I mean, the guy's just awesome, man. It's just like a great style, a style that not that I try to emulate, but that I really did admire. A guy that could strike on the feet, had piss poor wrestling, but used his weapons to his advantage, and that's I really respect that even with guys nowadays, just fighting to your strengths. Building a game around your attributes that works enough well for you. But yeah, so going into this fight though, Robbie Lawler here is coming in. I just think he's pretty shot overall. In that fight against Neil Magny, he actually went for the. I remember I bet Robbie Lawler there, and he actually went for the grappling first before
Yeah.
Neil Magny did. And
Confusing.
I think that's why he ended up losing that first round because it put him into a cycle there that he was down on. But I think that how the fight plays out here, and I did see that video just now pop up of him like shadowboxing and stuff. But how I see it play out, if Nick Diaz is in any way himself, if he has been training, if he has been doing that stuff, which I think he has, and I don't think that he is going to lose that many steps. I think how Robbie Lawler approaches this fight, whether it be him being uber aggressive to start the fight, and coming at Nick Diaz and trying to knock his head off with some of the, whatever power he still has, or if he is very patient, and lets the fight come to him, I think both of them honestly play into Nick Diaz's hands because if it's a slow fight, Nick can, start to knock that ring rust off, get more comfortable in there as it goes. And if Robbie Lawler is just coming in here trying to take his head off, I think Nick Diaz, the thing that he won't have lost is some of that defensive minded stuff that he has where he rolls with punches decently. He has a really good chin. He's always shown that, so I'd be really surprised to see, like you said, those props that you're talking about are very juiced because that's how they see it. They see that Robbie Lawler doesn't have the power to probably put Nick Diaz away, and Nick Diaz will probably be able to stay behind his his guard and stuff and be able to avoid the big shot there. But what I am concerned about is how Nick Diaz is with reaching his punches, finding the target on Robbie Lawler consistently, hitting him to the body, coming back up to the head. How is his cadence there? How is his distance management there? Both these guys are southpaws. I've never been impressed with Robbie Lawler's jab, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. So we'll see how Nick Diaz is able to settle into that pocket range and be able to start unloading on Lawler. And yeah, I mean, I think there are some stuff that plays into the hands of Diaz with it being a 5-round fight. All those things, I mentioned there, and I think that Lawler sometimes, he's shown that he kind of gets stuck in the mud. To take a thing from Conor McGregor, and that Kobe coming to fight. In that Rafael dos Anjos fight, you see a lot of times he's very immobile. He stops moving after a while. When he does start fatiguing, he's not moving around in the cage and moving his feet. And if Nick Diaz gets going and that trait of Lawler comes out, I think that Nick Diaz is gonna start putting punches on him in bunches, and you'll see the old Nick Diaz. So I'm trying to avoid being too much into this fight in terms of putting a bet on it. I think these narratives. I saw Josh Thompson, that dude, saying, "Hey, I saw a video of Nick Diaz getting knocked out." Blah 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 blah. All these rumors and stuff, which you cannot neither confirm or deny. Josh Thompson should be the last guy talking about that stuff because one time before one of his fights, people were saying that he got knocked out by Aaron Pico and all this stuff, and I think it ended up being true. But he should note and not to talk about that. But I'm not relying on anything he's saying there. And I don't think Robbie Lawler is knocking him out anyway. It doesn't really matter to me. So, I like Nick here. If this price keeps going up, it's plus 105 here in some places. I think I'll have to get involved for a small bet. Because I just think that Robbie Lawler, how I don't really like him to win 3 out of 5 rounds here against Nick if Nick is, going to be in there for the whole time. So I hope that Nick comes in here focused, comes here to win, isn't, into the antics if Robbie Lawler is not pursuing him that much. And that's why ultimately you need to be small on this fight in a money line perspective if you do like Nick. But probably be careful if you like Robbie Lawler a lot here because I'm not very confident in him in being able to like. I don't think he's been training. Like people are like, hey, he's at Stanford, all this stuff. Like I don't. He's not in there grinding every day, man. He's been out for a year. He's trying to say that you win or lose, it's not gonna be his retirement fight. I think it's BS because he was saying Nick Diaz is like the only fight that I get excited for now and all this stuff. So I think he's trying to hype himself up a little bit to think that this is not the end of his career. But I think it is overall, and I think he's gonna lose this fight if I were to have to pick it straight up.
And 2 points just to wrap this up. One thing a little concerning that Nick said is that he thinks he should be fighting Usman currently. He said that he
Yeah.
doesn't know why he's fighting Robbie because it's a rematch. So hopefully he's not looking past Robbie. I mean, he does have a tough test in front of him. And last thing I'll say, a little bit of statistics here for you as you
Mm.
love. The Colby Robbie Lawler fight took place at distance. It says for about 16 out of 25 minutes. And Colby landed 154 distance strikes over the course of 16 minutes. So I mean, if Colby Covington is landing 10 strikes a minute on you, not a good look. I mean, I know he has the pace, the pressure, the wrestling to go along with it, but still, I mean, Colby just easily outstriking Robbie there, not a good look. All right, so that's going to take us to the co-main event. Doubt we'll spend too much time on this one. Women's flyweight, Shevchenko, the champion, minus 1,700. Lauren Murphy, plus 850. I started the last one off. You start this one off,
Yeah.
Ozzy. Tell us why you're picking Lauren Murphy to pull off the upset.
Mean Murph been it's been getting me to the window quite often. I really like her a lot. So, I think I've bet her in every fight except for that Shaki Kova, whatever that fight. That was a dumb one by me. But all the other ones I was on her, plus money on all of them. But here she's coming in here against Shevchenko. Her paths to victory are, making this a grindy fight, I guess. But the thing is, Shevchenko is just so explosive at some points when she goes to the clinch or anywhere there. So I think that it's going to be very, very difficult for Lauren Murphy. She showed her ground game in that Calderwood fight, and showed that she was heavy on top when she got it to the ground. But I don't think that she's going to be able to control Valentina, even if she does, get the clinch or go for takedowns. Valentina's a southpaw, so I think she's gonna be ripping Lauren Murphy's body consistently, and I think this is very prime for a head kick knockout by Shevchenko for sure. Just she's really really good on coming with that from that left hand side. Sneaking in that left kick, and doing that like double miracle crow cop attack there. And Murphy's just a little slow on the feet. She doesn't move her head at all very much. And you saw in that Joanne Calderwood fight, Joanne just when she started getting Lauren's timing going, she was boxing her up pretty well, hitting her with teeps, hitting her with straight shots, bloodying her up. And I think the same thing is probably in the cards here for Shevchenko, doing that to her as well. Shevchenko KO would probably be my pick here. I know some people like the over. Some of my guys have been telling me about that, but I just think Shevchenko big. I mean, the KO is not good enough price. If you could get plus money, I guess, on the KO, I'd take a stab at that for action. But otherwise, I'll just sit back, admire the work of Shevchenko, and be pretty confident that she wins this at however way she wants.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta like Laura Murphy. I mean, if you don't like her, then you're not a good bettor, in my opinion, because she's been an underdog. She's been in really good betting spots the past, several spots. She's been plus EV in probably her best four fights. You and I were definitely on her versus Calderwood, and against the lower level opponents, she can steal rounds with those late takedowns, but that's not going to come into play here. Um, you know, Shevchenko should really butcher her on the feet. The striking shouldn't really be close at all. I mean, Murphy's a decent boxer, but the wealth of footwork and strike diversity from Shevchenko is just going to be a whole different level. So if Murphy wants to win, she's going to have to win 3 out of 5 rounds with her top control. And I don't think her wrestling or top game is good enough. We did see Maya win 1 round with a top game versus Shevchenko, but that was kind of random. That was kind of very fortunate sequence of events for Maya there, and I don't think Murphy can replicate that. So, full disclosure, I suck at picking Shevchenko outcomes. Whenever I pick her by finish, she decisions. Whenever I pick her by decision, she finishes. But I will be picking finish here. I'll pick a 1-2-3 finish sometime in there. But I know you're big on the trends here, Ozzy. Shevchenko has kind of gone back and forth with her past 8 fights, I think, with decision finish. Yep, decision finish in her past. Actually, it's 10 fights. She's alternated. So that's interesting. Very interesting here. She did finish against Andrade-Calvillo, so the trend points towards Shevchenko decision. But let's hope it's not a decision, because it should be very dominant. And let's hope that Shevchenko just finishes this one quickly. And looking forward to getting Murphy back in there against some winnable fights. But this is not one of them, unfortunately, for her. So let's hope Murphy doesn't get hurt too badly.
You should replace Ketlin Vieira. She should go out there, get choked out, and go up for that #1 contender fight.
There you go. Yeah.
At 135, I think.
Or Shevchenko should do that. Shevchenko just, I'll just beat up Miesha Tate for the fun of it, non-title fight. Easy paycheck. All right, that's going to take us to the main event. Featherweight division for the championship. We got champion Alexander Volkanovski -175, Brian Ortega +150. This fight was supposed to happen back in March, got canceled due to COVID. These guys ended up coaching the Ultimate Fighter. Now the fight's back on. And I'm just going to say I favor Volkanovski here. I think that I would cap him closer to the 70% range. So I do have 2 units on him at -162 odds. He got as good as -147 at times, but I didn't pull the trigger at the right time, unfortunately. But still, up until -200, I think there's value on Volkanovski. And I'll say that Ortega's best chance, I believe, is to win by finish. I think that he needs to win by finish in the first 3 rounds because Volkanovski is such a great round winner. He's such a great adaptable fighter. He makes reads as the fight goes on. Clearly evident in his last fight against Max Holloway. He had a tough round 1 and 2, lost those rounds at the end of the round with those late knockdowns, but didn't skip a beat, just got right back to work, won rounds 3, 4, and 5, and picked up his second decision victory in a row over Max Holloway. And for him to beat Max Holloway 2 times over the course of 50 minutes, I mean, just proves how elite level fighter Volkanovski is. Not to mention his victories over Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo, with pretty great performances there as well. So Volkanovski is not the flashiest fighter. He doesn't really go for finishes. I don't think he's a fan favorite, but I think he's a great round winner. I think he's a great distance striker. He's skilled in the clinch. He can hit offensive takedowns. I really think the guy is an elite level fighter in every aspect of MMA. And Ortega is really going to have to stun him early on here. I think Ortega is going to have to land a big punch, a big spinning elbow or something of some sort, which is kind of possible because Ortega does have really good use of his elbows. One of the few fighters who throws elbows like in close at the distance striking. So Ortega is going to have to land a big shot. He's going to have to swarm Volkanovski and get him out of there, with strikes or jump on a submission like he likes to do. But if he doesn't do that in the first 3 rounds, I think rounds 4 and 5, the longer the fight goes, it really favors Volkanovski, and Volkanovski is going to make reads and take over. So I think Ortega will win around here, maybe round 1 or 2, with Volkanovski just starting to make reads and heating up. But as the fight goes on, we're going to see Volkanovski chop down the legs, start to outbox Ortega, and likely get the fight in the clinch, possibly even take Ortega down if he wants to. And last thing I'll say is that I think the market is kind of overreacting to Ortega's most recent victory against Korean Zombie. Zombie is a guy who stands right in front of you. He doesn't pressure you. He doesn't have many wins outside of round 1 in his career. And Ortega, just outboxed him and looked very good in that fight. But I think Volkanovski is like a polar opposite of Korean Zombie, and this is going to be such a different matchup that last fight of Ortega's isn't going to be too relevant. So I think the goes the distance is pretty likely here, and If it goes to decision, it heavily favors Volkanovski, and I'll wrap this one up with my pick as Volkanovski 49-46. Pass this one over to you, Ozzy. What are you thinking about the main event for the featherweight championship?
Yeah, man. I'm a big fan of Brian Ortega. And I loved watching his last fight. Him come out looking so different there. And throw a lot of different wrenches out there. For Chan Sung Jung to deal with. Volkanovski, he's just been underwhelming to me overall. I feel just there, not that overwhelming, just, there's a lot of things about his game that I don't know how well they're going to age. Like, I do think that he has some actually, grappling game that he just never goes to. If you watch that like Jeremy Kennedy fight, he just absolutely smashed that guy from on top. Once he got there, and he's really difficult to move when he gets there, and he's pretty educated, and he throws really really good ground and pound shots. But I think Ortega here poses a lot of problems potentially for Alexander Volkanovski. I think it's been about a year, right, since that Chan Sung Jung fight. So I think that Ortega, he's still improving, man. I think that he, in that fight just came out with just so many different ways that that I hadn't seen before, between the kicks, between the southpaw stance, between some of those spinning back elbows that he's throwing, some of the power that he was showing with some of those punches, and then his transition game, which has always been really really good. But I just like that wrinkle that he showed, and the ability that he was fighting from that southpaw stance, which we've never seen Volkanovski deal with a southpaw before. I mean, his main strategy in those Max Holloway fights was throwing 8,000 leg kicks over the course of the fight. And I just don't think that's going to be like, I don't think that Brian Ortega is really going to be respecting that. Like, he's not, Volkanovski is not winning this fight by just throwing leg kicks, for 25 minutes against Ortega. I do think that Volkanovski throws some good hooks and some good punches in the pocket. He has his hands up, typically, and he's able to throw punches on the weak side. But I think Ortega here, he stays behind his punches and his kicks really, really well. I think this is probably a fight that is slow to progress. But I like Ortega here overall. I really want to take a bet on him here because I just think he's going to be able to have some success on Volkanovski early here. I think that obviously his submission game is going to be there, but his wrestling is the thing that I'm skeptical about. I do think that if he is put on his back, I don't think that Volkanovski should be that afraid there, because even though it's T City and everything like that, it's still the submissions that he gets are usually in transitions. I don't think that he's going to be guard submissioning Volkanovski in his sweep game. I'm not sure about it overall. So, I wouldn't be surprised by Volkanovski coming in here with some grappling game plan here to get this fight to the ground in some way, shape, or form. But, I just I don't think that he is a runaway winner here, especially with how Brian, I think, is able to look early on in this fight. I think if the fight goes on later, I definitely favor Volkanovski in those championship rounds. I think that Ortega, is probably he has to step on the gas early on and look to put some damage on Volkanovski. But Volkanovski's got a blockhead. I don't think he's particularly that difficult to hit. But like you said, when he does come with that pressure, I do think that he's a son of a bitch to handle. But I like Ortega, man. I think that he'll be able to land some punches on Volkanovski. I don't think Volkanovski is going to be landing as much as he's used to with the stance and the game that Ortega is going to look to employ here. And I do think there is a potential for him to lose this fight. So I'll still pick Volkanovski here. I do think that the price potentially, like, it could go both ways. I do think that there's people very interested, though, in Brian Ortega here. Even though the price has been going in Volkanovski's direction here, and I'd be surprised if this goes higher than that, because if I get a plus, let's see, what is it now? If I get a plus,
150.
like, yeah, if I get a plus like 160, 165 on Ortega, I think I will take that. Um, and hope for a close fight here where I could potentially get out of that, because Ortega is just so tough, and I think that Volkanovski can get countered here when he does get overly aggressive, and I do give the power advantage in the hands to Ortega. Just I think that Volkanovski's tough, but he hasn't hurt a lot of guys with punches very much. He finished Chad Mendes, but that was Mendes is looking great in that fight, and that was more of a nutritional thing where Mendes, just doesn't have the gas there to win that fight. And otherwise, man, I think that Ortega is going to pose him some problems. So I'll take Volkanovski here. But if this line keeps going up, I'll have a bet on a money line bet on Ortega, and potentially maybe some prop action as well.
Yeah, it's when you were talking, it made me think about who's gonna jump out to an early lead here. Ortega is kind of known for starting slow, losing the first couple of rounds, and coming back. Volkanovski also a very methodical fighter who likes to take in that information. So there's a good chance that we see like a really slow round 1 or 2 here. But yeah, very competitive fight. It should be a fun one. Ortega finishing early wouldn't totally shock me. Ortega finishing late would be very impressive to me. And I think if anyone's finishing here, it is Ortega. So really fun fight.
I'm picking Ortega. I'm picking Ortega to get the upset. New champion, Jiu-Jitsu, T-City. Let's get. I think he could potentially even take this guy down if he's super tricky. Maybe in the clinch or something like. Or it needs to be early. It needs to be early, because I think that he loses gas. But man, Ortega's legit, man. I think he's getting underrated here. I really do feel that way.
All right, I'll go with he's getting overrated. So I'll pick Volk to justify -170, and that'll be our line in the sand. I don't think we disagreed on too many takes this week, so this will be a good one. But that's gonna do it for the podcast. Hope you all enjoyed. Hope you all are able to get some valuable betting information, and hope you all enjoy the fights this weekend. So we'll see you before the next UFC event, and peace out, fellas.